This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the
Love it.
Maze.
Love
And
it.
I am lucky today to have somebody on who I have listened to on the radio. I don't want to say for many years, but Glenn, it's been many years. Um, and, you know, I was always envious of you and the morning crew because in 1968, when I graduated high school, I told my parents that I was going to major in communications and broadcasting. And they looked at me like I was the stupidest person in the world. It was like,
Right. Get a
there are
real
no
job.
women in broadcasting. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? And um, they said, no, we're not going to pay for college if you do that. So behind their back, I took all my communication classes. And after 2 years, I had an associate's degree. And I called my parents up and I said, would you please come to graduation? And they said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I now have my associates in communications. Needless to say, they did not come. They pulled me out of college because, again, this was 1970. And they said, you'll be lucky if you can stand out on a stage and point to a refrigerator. And I said, okay. And I gave up my dream until 2008. So here I am listening to you on the radio, and um, it was always a dialogue that was fun and exciting to listen to. But how did you get into that, and how has it changed you over the years? Because radio is not the same as it was when I was listening to you.
No, radio is much different, and I fell into it by accident because I think when you're in high school, I think you start developing interests, things that you like to do. And, at that time, I was working at a nursing home and I was like the head chef and I was cooking. And then on the side, I would go and I would entertain all the residents. So I would go and I would play all songs, from the 50s and 60s and stuff. And then I took that gig out on the road. And then I went on like this nursing home world tour where I would go out to all the different nursing homes in the area and I would play music for them. And that led me to two thoughts in my mind. Number one, I enjoy entertaining people and making people smile and be engaged. So that was the one takeaway. And the other takeaway was I really enjoy cooking. So I'm thinking I have to do one of these two things when I get out of high school. And so I decided to go down the cooking route just because that's what I was mainly doing. That the playing music was my side hustle, so to
Okay.
speak. And so I decided to go down that road. And I went down that road and it was great. And I enjoyed learning all the basics that I needed to do, but I was still kind of missing something. So I dropped out. I think, a semester away, from graduating. And so I dropped out of that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to pursue music because this is what I like to do. I love entertaining people. And so I went into the University of Akron and I said, I am going to be a piano teacher because piano is what I play. And this is what I'm going to do. And then I can go and take that and not only teach people, but then I can go and perform and do all this other stuff. So I started going to Akron, and my teacher, my piano teacher, was the great, great, great granddaughter of Franz Schubert, who
Oh,
was a
wow.
famous, famous composer, like along the lines of Beethoven, Mozart, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wow, like I'm being taught by somebody so famous. This is great. And she said, I am sure, and I moved here from California because the pay was so much better in Akron. And I said, fantastic. I said, if you don't mind me asking, what does somebody with your not only lineage, but expertise, because she had a doctorate of music, that's at least 13, 14 years. It's like getting a doctor of medicine, only there's music involved. And she's like, well, I'm in the upper echelon of what people get paid. I'm getting paid $38,000 a year. And I said, wow. And this was back, like in the like early 90s and stuff. So even back then, $38,000 wasn't a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
To have a doctorate. So I said to myself, neither of these are going to be able to work for the long term, because I don't know if I can go to school for 13 or 14 years. So I was caught in between things. I didn't know what to do. I decided to go and take a trip with my girlfriend at the time to go to the Conan O'Brien show in New York. This is something that we had always watched together. And I said, we're going to go and we're going to see this show. And I went to the show, and they had the pre-warm up with the audience and things like that. And so I went and I did that. And somebody who was warming up the audience noticed me, because I was acting like I was like raising my hands and screaming and jumping up and down because I was so excited to be there. And so Conan O'Brien comes out at the time after the person leaves. He comes out and he's like, how many people thought that the last guy was funny? And I raised my hand. He's like, how many people thought he was really funny? And I stood up and down. And he said, how many people think that this is the greatest guy ever? And I jumped up and down and I said, Conan O'Brien, I peed my pants. It was so funny. And everybody turned around and they looked at me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? So the show gets, everybody laughs. The show gets ready to be recorded now. And then David Hasselhoff is the first guest. David Hasselhoff goes and sits down and he said, before we start anything, who's the guy in the audience that peed his pants? So now I'm on TV and they show my face and they're like, come on down. So I came on down and I'm sitting on the couch now with David Hasselhoff, Conan O'Brien, Max Weinberg, and the band that they have. They're all playing music. We all start dancing. I have this incredible memory by doing this. I leave and I said, well, I need to be a part of TV now. But obviously I don't have a TV face. So I'm like, I'm going to go behind the scenes and I'm going to be a TV cameraman. So that's when I enrolled in broadcasting school in 1996. And I said, I just want to be behind the scenes. That's all I want to do. There were no TV internships available. So the only internship that was available was Q104 at the time. And I said, well, I guess I'll go and do this until something in TV opens up, because that's what everybody wants to do.
Right.
Everybody that gets into media and communication, they want to go into TV. I said, I'm going to do radio. So I became an intern, and because of my musical skills, I started writing parody songs with the people that were already on the morning show. The morning show at that time was Larry Morrow and Sally Spitz. And, so I started working behind the scenes with them. And then that continued. And then I kind of became more of a parody song. That was my niche. That was the thing that I was able to bring that was different than everybody else. So that kept me on the morning show. And then I was on the morning show for 21 years after that point. Yeah. Wow. And then, that's basically how everything started.
Well,
long story short.
And you went by the name of Glenn, the Funny Songman, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I remember my husband and I listening to your parodies. And I used to send clips to my brother, who's a music producer. And I'd say, have you ever heard of this guy before? And he would say to me, he's writing parodies. He said, that's not what I'm into, but yeah, they're really, really good. But you went from being this funny song man to this wonderful husband and father. And most recently I've seen a lot of, I guess I want to call them blogs that you put out on Facebook, and they're so meaningful. So how did you go from this funny guy to this deep thinking man that you are today?
Well, one of the things that the radio station pays me to do is to be in a good mood. I can't be on the radio if I'm in a bad mood. I can't bring my problems to the radio station. I have to leave them at the door. And no matter what, I have to have a smile on my face, and I have to tell you that everything is great. Now, there are shows out there that you don't need to do that. There are shows where all the people do for 4 hours is complain. They complain about our sports teams. They complain about politics. They complain about people that are, famous Clevelanders. People have made a very, very good living just being negative. And that's great if that works for them and if that's that kind of show. But when you have a music intensive show like I do, it's your job to give little tidbits about what's going on that's great, what's happy. I mean, if there's a news story that happens and, there's something that's negative or somebody passes away or whatever, that's also our job too. But the majority of the time is to kind of be an escape for people through not only the music, but everything that surrounds the music as well. So it's cathartic in a way, because if I'm in a good mood and I come to the radio station, oh, that's great. That's the best case scenario. If I'm in a bad mood, if I'm sick, if I got into an argument with Steph, my wife, if the kids aren't behaving, if I didn't sleep, it doesn't, none of that matters. So it became cathartic in a sense where I had to fake it. And I had to do that. And here's the beautiful thing. When you know you have to do something, it changes you as you're doing it. You start off saying, oh, all right, let's put the smile on and everything's great. And you're really having to work hard to be happy. But the more you work at being happy, the more natural it becomes.
Absolutely.
I'll listen sometimes to shows that I know that I'm in a bad headspace, and I listen to I'm on from 3 to 7 now on Star 102. I listen to the 3 o'clock hour, and I'm like, okay, all right, he's trying to be happy. I could hear it. And then I listen to the 4 o'clock, and then I'll listen back to the 5 o'clock, and I'm like, oh no, that's a happy guy right there. So one of the ways that I try to be happy and positive is by almost forcing myself until it actually becomes natural. And I realized that a lot of the blogs and posts and stuff that I do come from areas where maybe I'm struggling a little bit. If I'm writing something about not having a father figure when I grew up, if I'm writing something about watching the kids grow up, and as a dad, I want to be able to capture all those moments and all those memories and stuff. That's something that I'm struggling with in the moment. So I write about it, and by the time I'm done writing about it, it's like personal therapy. You can go to a therapist, and that's great, and I encourage that. I think everybody should have a therapist. I think everybody should go on a regular basis, even if you think everything is fine in your life. It's not. You're still dealing with stuff that even maybe you don't know, that you just buried it inside. So I encourage that. My therapy is to write. And by forcing myself at times to be in a good mood, it puts me in a good mood. And to force myself to write about things that I struggle with, it forces me to come up with solutions, or at least attempt to come up with those solutions. Right. So I figure if I'm writing about something that bothers me, perhaps somebody else is affected with the same thing, struggling, and people will go and say, hey, you know what, this is what I needed today. I needed to hear these words, or I needed to know that I'm not a complete failure as a parent or as a daughter or as a son or whatever. And I have guys that open up all the time. Guys that's like, hey, you know what, this is exactly what I'm feeling. And maybe they can't go and put it into words. So at first I did it for myself, because I was so tired of what social media has become. Right. And then I started doing it. I'm like, if I'm going to post and I'm going to do something, I would rather be helpful to somebody else and also helpful to me as well. It's like, it's a win-win. So that's
Well,
why I started doing it.
and
And that was like 2016, I think I started writing them. And now I do like a couple a month and stuff like that. But it's been very helpful.
well, one of the things that I have learned since I started podcasting, people would say to me, and I started this over 10 years ago,
Mhm.
and that's when most people didn't even know what a podcast was.
Right, right.
And they'd say, well, why are you doing it? And I said, the reality of it is, if I can touch one person,
Mhm.
my day has been made, because
Yeah.
that means I'm doing something. And just like you, I cannot tell you how many times I have a full schedule for the day and I look at it and go, I just don't want to do this. But as soon as that person comes on, like you did, it's like that I flip a switch and it's like, I do want to do this. I want to hear where you're coming from, because maybe that can help me.
Mhm.
Or maybe I look at it and go, I'm never going to be like that, but that's okay,
Yeah.
because that's how Glenn is. And I too will sit down and write my blogs. In the beginning, it's that tough feeling that's coming out and that sadness. But then I start asking myself as I'm writing, was this how you really want to feel? And the answer typically is no.
Oh,
So what can you do? And sometimes I just stop writing until my brain can click in. But a lot of times I'll just go seek out a quote that says, this is where I'm coming from.
that's what I'm feeling. Yes.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that's what I see in your writing. I start reading it and, oh, things are a little tough. Oh, the kids are growing up. Oh, my daughter's going to homecoming. Oh, what's happening to me? And
Yeah.
then by the end, it's like, oh, those kids were so wonderful. And the pictures were so beautiful. And my daughter had a great time. And you can hear that you're just as excited as what you were at first feeling angst about.
Yeah, and it is a process. It's almost like a story. You start off when I go to sit down at the keyboard, much like you do, there's something on your mind. There's something you need to get out. You don't know what the end result is. You haven't, made it like a movie where, middle, beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
You just know that you have this thought or something that you need to go and work through. And as you do that, you start realizing that maybe this is not a me thing. Maybe there are multiple people that are dealing with this. And it's not always problems. Sometimes it's a beautiful thing. We're going, it's fall right now, and we're going through a lot of people are going through the change of their summer routine versus their fall
Right.
routine. And that's difficult on a lot of people. A lot of a lot of people don't like that the sun's going down at 7 o'clock at night. It doesn't feel good. It changes things, but there's also beauty in that as well. There's beauty with the upcoming holidays and being able to indulge in traditions and being able to see family that you probably haven't seen all summer because you just get together on the holidays. So, but it's a process that you need to go through in your mind to get to where you need to be so that you're content. And you got to figure that if you're going through that, somebody else is going through that as well. And so
Exactly.
if you're gonna be on social or you're gonna do podcasting or any of those things, I would much rather find possible solutions to things that you may be going through in life rather than tell you all my opinions about hot button topics.
Exactly.
So that's just how I approach it. Not everybody else does it, but whatever.
Well, it's interesting. My son, a little over, well, it'll be a year in December. He got a job down in Texas. He packed up his Mazda and drove off. And the day that he left, I was standing there
Yeah.
in the driveway thinking, you're going to be 1,000 miles away. I'd already looked up airfares and it was like, maybe I can come see you once a year. And
Yeah.
that devastation of him leaving, but yet at the same time, I was so excited for him. So my emotions were up and down.
Yeah.
This past weekend, he had just come back for his first visit, and he was here for 10 days, and he finally realized that this is our home, but his home right now is Texas.
Yeah.
And when he left on Sunday, even though I'm going to see him over Thanksgiving, I felt horrible, just horrible. And I sat down and started writing about that. And by the third paragraph, my brain shifted. As sad as I feel, this is exciting. I'm going to see him in about 30 days.
Isn't that's
And
beautiful that you could do that.
and I knew that he was going to call me as soon as he got home. And, and when I started remembering all those things and sharing it, it was like, yeah, we are allowed to feel sad and hurt, but we've got to find our way out of that. And sometimes it's just a reminder, or it's creating something new. And that's what I see in your writing.
Well, thank you. That's awesome that you went through that, because that's exactly the process that I think a lot of people don't go through. I didn't have a father growing up, and I look at that as not like something bad. I actually look at that as a blessing, because in my world, it's like my mom was everything. So my mom actually taught me the emotion gene and gave me you don't have to hold everything in and be stoic, and because you're the leader of the family, and the stereotypes of parents is so much different now. Yet the people that are teaching the parents of today, or that have taught the parents of today, still taught them all the old-fashioned things.
Right.
There is still that. I mean, yes, there are multiple parents that are working in households now, but it's still, father in charge, and wife does this, and well, she'll take care of the kids. Like, those stereotypes still exist. And I never had any of that stuff because I didn't have a dad perpetuating those stereotypes.
Right.
I had a mom that said, hey, you need to feel, I would see her cry when she would talk about my dad. I was the only man of the house, so I had to go and comfort her. So I had that gene from a very young age, and I knew that being emotional and showing your feelings wasn't a bad thing. That wasn't a girl thing, or however it is that you look at it. It was just me being me. And I think as parents of today, that gives me an advantage with my family and my kids, because, my wife and I are we're very different in our parenting styles. She's more strict. She's more, I have expectations. I want the best for you. I will be involved. We'll be at every game we could be at. We'll got a choir concert tonight. We are going to be there, but she's going to parent more from I have expectations and they're going to be met, but not with a harsh hand, more with I expect a lot out of you. And I parent more of hey, you're having a bad day, come here, we'll cry together, I'll give you some stories about my childhood. And but it's a compliment to each other. It's if it was just me parenting the kids, I don't know where they would be today. They'd be emotional crying messes in the corner sucking their thumb. If it was Steph going and parenting them, they would be a little bit more rigid and tightly wound. But you combine the two and you got the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
So that's how I look at it, and that's how I try to go and do things. But as parents, the roles that you think you're supposed to assume doesn't necessarily make. You need to find that balance. If you're a single parent, God bless you, it's so much work. My mom had so much work. She didn't have the time to be able to go and make sure that every need was met. She didn't have the time because she's busy working. It was
Yeah.
up to me to kind of like be independent and things like that. So, not assuming stereotypical roles as parents, I think, is invaluable to our kids today.
So let's talk a little bit about your kids. So your daughter is the oldest, and she's in
15.
high school now.
Yeah. She's in 10th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
So pretty soon she'll be flying off to college.
Not in high school. Yes. Yeah.
And then you have one son or two sons?
I have two sons. Cooper's 11 and Carter is 9. Yeah.
So are your kids similar, or do you have three totally different personalities in your house?
Well, as most parents can attest, you can parent every kid the exact same way, and they will all come out different. And you wonder, and with the oldest, she's great, and she's got a good head on her shoulders. So we're like, whatever we did with her, we're gonna do the same thing with Cooper. And so we did the exact same thing. We followed the book that we wrote together, and we did it, and it didn't work. He's got his own mind, his own thoughts. He's probably the most intelligent out of all three. He's the one that's going to be either a brain surgeon or something. He's going to go off and do good things. And then we have Carter, who just likes to play sports and will probably end up in jail by the time he's 18.
Oh,
So we have three very different kids that are parented exactly the same way. But it's we have so many date nights where we just sit and we talk about, okay, we're doing it good with this one. What are we doing wrong with this one? What do we need to do with this one so that this one doesn't become this one? And here's the thing, you're never going to get an answer.
That's right.
You're never going to get an answer. You're never going to say, well, if I would just do more of this, then it'll be okay, because it's not. The only thing that you could do is be there for them when they want to speak. Give them one-on-one time when you can, as often as you can. Make them feel loved, appreciated, listened to, instead of just, throwing down the hammer of, here's what you need to do and here's your chores, and hope for the best. We have, in our family, we realize that if we don't go to church every single Sunday, they're missing something. They're a little bit off. They feel they can kind of go and push the limits a little bit more. Once they go to church, they seem a little more grounded. They seem a little bit more, well, maybe I can't get away with this because God's watching type deal. And it centers them a little bit more, and they feel a little bit more like somebody's watching them type deal. So that has worked in our family. That's what works for us. Going and having those routines and making sure that they are accountable for their actions. And then, and besides that, we also have cameras in the pantry and in the basement, so that when they go in there and they see sugar and junk food and stuff, they're like, oh, the cameras are on. Oh, I can't go and do it. And I know that seems obnoxious to go and do that, but my wife works from home and she's very busy, working up in her office, and then I'm not here. So when they're home from school, there's kind of not a whole lot of supervision. So we have done what we need to do in order to try to keep them accountable. Because when you leave it up to them, they're going to make mistakes. They're kids. I want them to know that there are consequences, and that you just can't go and have a free for all, because every kid wants that, but you can't do it.
And I think what is interesting, we can't necessarily judge ourselves as parents as our kids are growing up. We have to do the best that we can do.
Correct.
My son at the age of 6 was diagnosed being on the autism spectrum. This was back in the 90s. Nobody really understood autism. And so he was treated as if, his brain wasn't working. And he excelled academically up until the day he was diagnosed. He was the most popular kid in the neighborhood. But once he got diagnosed and everybody sort of knew that he was diagnosed, his whole life changed, as did ours. But what is interesting, he had a wonderful neurologist who said to me one day, when he turns 25, he's going to be the young man that you raised. And I looked at him like, well, what does that mean? But we didn't treat him differently at home, even though maybe at school and the kids did. At home, he was typical like anybody else. Almost exactly on his 25th birthday, he matured. He knew what he wanted to do. He worked towards it. And if you looked at him or talked to him, you wouldn't know that he was on the spectrum, other than the fact that he's a very young, emotional young man. So if he sees something that hits him hard, he might cry. And
Wow.
to me,
Let
I
me
think that's
let me ask
the
you
way
this.
we brought him up.
Let me ask you this real quick. So you said everything changed once he got the diagnosis. Did it change because he started to believe that he was different?
No, everybody treated him differently.
They treated him differently.
Right,
Got it.
because the school said to us back in that time, look, it's important that his classmates understand he may be different.
Yeah.
So every year, all the way through his 12th grade, he would stand up in front of his homeroom and explain that he was on the spectrum.
Oh,
So
wow.
if kids went home and they said that to their parents and their parents didn't understand, they would say, don't play with him.
Yeah.
But because we didn't treat him differently at home, we kept encouraging him. It was like he gravitated, he knew.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, growing up was difficult. Okay. When you talk about your youngest, he loves sports and he may end up in jail by the time he's
Yeah.
18. That
Yeah.
was my son through and through.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like, why do you do some of these things that aren't right? And we finally figured it out once he
Yeah.
matured. He was trying to be accepted. He was trying to
Mhm.
do what he saw other people doing and getting away with. But when
Yeah.
he did it, it was wrong. And so I think that's, again, something else that has drawn me to your writing, is that you've got 3 wonderful children. You look at them all differently, but you
Mhm.
love them all equally.
Yeah.
And it's okay if they're not perfect today,
Yeah.
because tomorrow is a whole new day and they can be totally different.
Yeah, it is. And as they get older, watching that process and watching them problem solve, I think that's the greatest thing that we could do as parents, is to give them the tools that when something doesn't go right, what they can do. Because the easy pitfalls are, I can drink, I can do drugs, I can get in with the wrong crowd that's going to accept me, I can go and be promiscuous because they're going to tell me everything that I want to hear, just in order to get in bed with me. And those are all nice, quick, easy fixes.
Right.
And they really do help in the moment. All of those things are extremely helpful at that time, to the point that if you keep encouraging it or they keep doing that, then it really becomes a problem. So giving them the tools of how to go and deal with all those things. My mom always told me when I was in a fight, because I got into a lot of fights when I was a kid, my mom's only advice for that is, you need to talk to the person. You need to have a conversation with them. Tell them that you don't want to be in a fight. Tell them, and I said, Mom, that's not how it works. She's like, no, you need to have a conversation with them. And so I did. I would have conversations with them, and I would get my butt kicked because at the time they don't want to have a conversation.
Right.
And then I finally met my bully, and he said, we're going to fight. And I said, okay. And so we met under the bridge, and the whole all around in a big circle. And I didn't throw the first punch, but he made me take my glasses off, and he started hitting me, and I went to town. And he stopped and he got up and he extended his hand and he said, I didn't think you were going to fight back. And I really respect you now. And I said, wow. And I'm still friends with him today. He's going through a bunch of health issues and things like that. And I have talked with him and, try to coach him a little bit. He's in the process of having a leg amputated, and he's going through like a lot of stuff right now. So it's amazing how my mom, and she meant the best at that time. Let's talk it through. Let's not fight. Fighting's not the answer. But then I went and I did, and I earned respect. And now I have a friendship that I can go and be of help to him in a very small way right now. Giving kids the tools, and tools that are helpful to them in the moment,
right,
is so invaluable right now. But as parents, we only know what we know. So my mom was doing the best job she could. Her parents did the best job that they could, but you're a product of that. And if those things don't work for you, you have to have the knowledge and the wherewithal to expand your horizons and say, hey, there may be more to the advice that I give than just what I have inside of me. Maybe I need to read more. Maybe I need to do and listen more podcasts, other people that are in the same situation as me, and how did they handle it, instead of being like tunnel vision with all that you know and blaming your parenting on, well, that's how I was brought up. So,
well, as they've said for a very long time, when you have a child, they don't give you a manual with the child like they do if you buy a new car. And in fact, we just bought a new car and the manual is telling us absolutely nothing about it. So, we're going to have to learn it just like we did raising our kids. I too have two boys, 15 years apart. They are totally different. However, now as adults, when they get together, they're like two peas from the same pod.
Oh, it's so great.
They don't always think alike, but they can always come together. And so that makes me go back and realize, okay, I didn't have a manual. I did the best I could. I can't beat myself up over it. And our kids can't beat themselves up over the fact that maybe they were raised not in what they consider a traditional way. It sounds like you have really grown from it. You realize, hey, this was the situation, and I have a loving mother. She taught me, and guess what? I am in a loving relationship. I have children, and now I'm taking what she taught me and modifying it for my relationship, which I think is beautiful.
It is. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly. And I think that's what most parents do, because it's a process. The thing that amazes me is, I have some friends that, they're just starting to have their first child. And they're talking, they're seeing their child for the first time. They're like, I never knew I could be in love, at first sight, and all those things. And I didn't have those feelings. I'm not ashamed to admit it. That's just me, though. I couldn't connect with a baby that doesn't talk, that all they do is cry. It's almost like at the very beginning, it's like taking care of a pet.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a whole lot that you get back from them in that moment. And I really struggled when I first had Madeline. I really struggled, because I'm like, this is supposed to be the greatest time of my life, and I was blessed to be able to have a child, and I can't connect with this child because the child doesn't talk to me. And the child, most of the time, does the things that I don't want the child to do. I want the child to sleep when I sleep. I want the child to eat when I have the spoon. This is what you give me that, and I'll give you love. And it just doesn't work that way. They keep you up. They make you cranky. There are beautiful moments. And when you look back at it in pictures, you're like, there are some beautiful moments. But it wasn't love at first sight. Not in the least. And so you go through this process of finding out what love really is and how you want the best for this child. And as she was becoming 2 and 3 and 4, I started developing those feelings. It wasn't an instant love. And now, as we have one-on-one time and we talk about, sports things, and we talk about boys, and we talk about, things that are going on with high school, and as we look for colleges, that bond is becoming deeper and deeper. And now the love that I thought that I was supposed to have when she was born, I'm like, oh, well, now this is love. It's the same with my wife. It's the same with anybody. You don't just immediately have all these feelings. It takes time to develop. And then you realize that as you go through the trials and tribulations of life, that actually enforces that love and makes it real rather than just something you're supposed to say,
I love it. So you and Steph have been married how long?
17 years.
17 years.
Mhm.
So my husband has the same. When people ask him how long we've been married,
Mhm.
and it's 39 years now, he'll say 39 years, not counting tomorrow. And I've always asked him, why not counting tomorrow? He says, because I really, really love you now. But you know what? I'm not sure I loved you this much when we first met.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I loved you this much the day we got married.
Yeah.
He said, I loved you, but it's changed. And he said, and right now I'm in love with you. And it's like, wow, I had to wait almost 40 years to hear that. But you know what? He's right, because love does change. In the beginning, a lot of times it's attraction, infatuation.
Well, no, that is what it is.
Or even the want just to have somebody in our life.
Yeah, that's it. We just don't want to be lonely.
Absolutely.
But the only thing that makes love is going through the trials and tribulations. Because unless you go through something major, whether it's a death, whether it's marital problems, I've gone through a lot of that stuff with Steph. We've had our share of marital problems, and we've gone to marriage counseling and things like that. And I always, like I said, I always encourage that stuff. But the time before counseling versus the time after is night and day. Because when you see that you can get through something, you're like, well, this is my ride or die. This
Right.
now that we've gotten through this, now we don't have a choice, because I know how you react to problems. And I know that what I give you is going to be helpful to you, and vice versa. Before that, all the couples that, well, we never argue, we never do anything, everything is just always great. I'm like, well, then you don't have a relationship.
Right.
And there's lots of couples I know, they don't argue. Well, we just always get along, or we just, or they're living such separate lives that it doesn't allow for them to get together and actually face problems, because it doesn't matter. She does one thing, he does another thing, doesn't matter. But man, getting down and dirty and fighting, we fight all the time in front of the kids, and we fight respectfully, because I want them to see us fight. I want them to see that she's wrong. No. I want them to see that you can have a conflict. You could yell, but you're also talking, and then there's a resolution. I never want them to see fight, tears, somebody leaves or whatever, and then no resolution, because then the kids don't know what to do. By fighting, the kids are like, oh, I just need to keep fighting and talking through my points, and then we resolve it, and then we become stronger. So it's important. We don't go away to fight. We don't go like into the basement or anything like that. We do it right in the living room. So,
well, my youngest son is 33 years old, and he always reminds us of an argument that his dad and I had in the car in a fast food restaurant in Toledo. We were coming back from visiting my parents in Michigan. I don't even remember what it was about, but it was pretty bad, because I didn't want to get out of the car. And my son was sitting in the back seat, and I just remember his words saying, Dad, Dad, don't yell at Mom. And my husband does not yell, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And we did resolve it. I eventually got out of the car. I went in, I ate with them. We came back to the car. We hugged and kissed. But he said, I just remember that. He said it sounded so mean and nasty and angry.
Yeah.
But you and Dad got over it by the time we finished eating.
Yeah.
And that's how 99.9% of our arguments are, because we want to be together. We don't want those to tear us apart. And it sounds like that's what you and Steph are doing too. Yeah, it's okay to argue, because maybe you'll hear another point of view that all of a sudden will click in and go, oh, I maybe wasn't right. Or maybe she will. Or maybe you'll have to say, you know what?
Yeah.
Neither one of us are going to be right or wrong. It's just going to be.
Yeah. Sometimes you just agree to disagree. But yeah, that part is so important, because so many people are, like I said earlier in the podcast, are, taught to keep their feelings in. So you keep them in, and then all of a sudden you blow up for the silliest reason. And your partner's like, where did this come from? And it's like, you don't understand. It's not because you didn't pack the dishwasher correctly. It's because I don't like the way your mother-in-law treats me. It's like, what? What kind of argument is that? How does that come from the dishwasher? And it's because you hold it in. You just get out all that stuff in the moment. Right. And yet that's stuff that you don't know how to do in the beginning of any marriage. You don't know how to fight. You don't know about conflict at that point. You're too busy on the high of just getting married and starting life, and we just got a house, and look at us, and then all of a sudden there's problems. You're like, whoa, we don't know how to handle it. But that's what time and experience teaches you, and that's what actually makes the love become real, rather than something that your marriage certificate says it should be.
Absolutely.
So it's cool. Like, getting older, there are times where I condone it and don't like it, but most of the time I like the perspective that it's giving me in order to be, the best person that I could be, and the same with you. You're not the same person that you were when you wanted to go and get into communications and had to go behind the scenes. You have changed,
right? Absolutely.
And yet those lessons and stuff that you learned, you're able to carry off today and do your dream. So I commend you, and I think that's awesome.
Well, thank you. So Glenn, tell our listeners how they can listen to you on the radio, because you are still on the radio.
I am. Yeah, I'm in my 7th or 8th year at Star 102, and I'm going to be going into my 28th year in radio in general. But yeah, I'm on Star 102 Cleveland, 102.1 on the FM dial, if you still have what's called a radio. But most people are listening on the Odyssey app right now. So I encourage the app so much. It's AUDACY. You could find it on the Google Play Store or the Apple, store. And not only can you go and listen to me, but you can listen to some of your favorite podcasts. You could listen to sports stations from all across the country, all those things. And it's all completely free. And it's a very easy app to use. So if I'm playing a song that you don't like, you can listen to another station that plays the type of music that you like, and take it with you. You're out doing a walk, a jog, in the car. You can log on with your Bluetooth. There's all these different ways to listen now. It's my audience has definitely changed. You hear somebody call in from Cleveland. You're like, oh, you're listening in Cleveland. But now I'll have people calling in from Australia, listening, to the show and stuff like that, because it's worldwide. So it's still amazing to me, technology, how we're able to go and have conversations nowadays, and I'll bring it up to my kids and they'll be like, Dad, well, we've always had this, and they've always had cell phones and things like that. I'm like, you don't understand. The phone used to have a cord. Like, you had about 6 feet, and they're like, oh, we don't understand that. So any new technology that happens with radio, it's like, I look at it and I'm just like, wow, this is really cool, because I was on the other side of it.
Exactly.
So,
Well, I want to thank you
anyways,
so
it's
much.
been a pleasure to talk to you.
We'll have to have you on again. We'll have to catch up with,
Yeah.
the new blogs that you write. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Blessings to you, to all your listeners, and have yourself a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye now.
Bye.